Hello and welcome to this presentation. My name is Daniel Richter from the technical department at CAME Americas. And today we're going to talk about the operator ATS for swing gates. So let's go into the presentation. First, I'll do a quick overview of a typical installation of the main parts. There are the operators. In this case, there's two gates, so it can be also for one gate. The control board, these operators don't work by itself. They need a control board. So they need the box on the left side. And there's a remote control, optionally, but clients usually want a remote control or several control remotes. Then a selector, that's optional. Wire selector could be a key selector, maybe a button. It can be a keypad, any kind of control, a way to control the operator. Warning light, optionally, but it's good for warning that the operator is in motion. Photo cells, very recommended. We recommend at least two pair of photo cells, one for the inside, one for the outside. So if there's a car or even a person in the way of the gate, if it's closing, it's going to open. Or if it's automatic closing, it's not going to close because there's an obstruction. A junction box where all the cables and pipes are joined together. Physical stop, we always recommend having physical stop for the closing and for opening, something that stops the gate for actually keeping going. So besides, the operator can stop in any position, but it's always recommended to have physical stop. And a courtesy light that is optional for illuminating the pathway. And we want to point out the danger zones because obviously we are dealing with automatic machines and electricity, and so it's always had to have some basic precautions for risk of entrapment, for electric shocks, and so keep in mind that. And so selection criteria. So we have many operators that can work with swing gates. And the first thing when you go to the site basically is to recommend the client what operator to use. We're going to talk about today the ATS, but basically we want to overview how to choose. There's many applications. Sometimes it can be small homes, or sometimes apartment buildings, or in industries. In this case, the ATS can work in any of those places. There's also a characteristic like 24 volts, or maybe they need to work with 230. Or if it has an encoder or not, if it has a lock, if it can be, it can be, if it needs to be for unlimited operation, like continuous, open and close continuously, or they need to rest. In this case, the ATS can work continuously, so it doesn't have that problem. Also, the type of door, the length, and the weight. This is very important to choose the motor because you need to keep it inside the specifications. A type of motor, basically the door, type of door, obviously a swing gate. It has to be no obstructions on the gate, so it has space for the operator. And the length is very important because each operator has a limit for the length and also for the weight. Although I later going to talk about the relation because it can, even though it has a limitation for the length, is not the same as with the same weight limitations. The less weight it has the door, the longer it can be, and basically also the same. If the longer the door, the less weight has to be. So the limitations are depends. And this is another criteria. So those are the criteria, and also the selection requires also for the C value. The C value is the distance between the surface of the wall or pillar, column that where the operator is going to be installed, and the separation between that and the hinge of the gate. The separation is very important to know because each operator has a limit, physical limit of how far it can reach to the gate. and that limit is always in the specifications and the manual. So you need to be sure to be inside that value. And also there's a value I that basically is the space for the operators when it opens. Obviously, if there's a wall there, you have to have that in consideration so the operator doesn't hit the wall. Types of travel limits, this electronic operational delay, that's basically timing. Usually it's not done anymore. It's an old way to do it, although still sometimes it's done uh, to basically limit how long it's going, how long it takes to open, how long it takes to close, and do it by timing, and it stops in that way. This is more common, the mechanical and magnetic switch. This at ATS, the one we're talking about today, is with limit switches that you can regulate. There's two limit switches, one for closing, one for opening. So you regulate that for stopping the operator in each position. And also there's optical magnetic encoders. Actually, the ATS works with those, both two, the limit switch and the encoder. The encoder is mostly to know where the gate is, so that way it slows down in the correct position. And the limit switch for exactly know where to stop. This is the entire line of swing gate operators we have right now. There's an articulated arm. The most popular is the Fernie in this case. It's with an articulated arm. There's a warm drive that actually is the ATS we're talking about today is in the middle. There's other models that have similar design with a warm drive transmission. And also there's an underground. There's a Frog, Frog Plus, and Super Frog. Those are basically underground. Each type of operator has their own advantage and disadvantages. So that's one of the criteria you need to consider for the site to see which one to recommend. This is all the warrant drives we have, and so you can compare with the other ones, the ATS and the first one. So this C value is very important to know that maximum has at 200 millimeters. The distance between the surface where it's going to be mounted and the hinge of the gate. So that's the maximum it can be. If it needs more, so you need to choose another kind of operator, maybe the underground or maybe the articulated arm. And also you need to consider the length and the weight of it can handle. And later I'll show you more about that. So there's two models for gates that are 3 meters and for gates that are 5 meters. In this case, 3.8 feet and 16.4 feet. So the ATS is fairly new. It's for 2020. So it has two models, 3 meters and 5 meters. It can handle 200 millimeters C value. It's telescopic, so it's like a piston. Even though it looks like a hydraulic piston, it's actually electric, normal warm drive, and it's 24 volts. It's made of aluminum and steel. It has a modern design. So it's 24 volts DC. Although obviously that is managed by the control board. So you actually put the control board to 120 or 230, depending on the region. It talks about the gap. There's 3 meters and 5 meters. There's silent and fluid movement. Modern design, single code for left and right installations. That's another advantage. This kind of operator can be put in the left or right side of the gate. No modification required about that. And so there's also showing some characteristics. The key to unlock the system, there's a plastic key that you can, with a cover, that you can unlock the gate and open and close it manually. And there's adjustment built in for the limit switch that is a little cover so you can access the two screws. I'll talk about more later when we go through the installation. This is a suggestion of measurements of how to install the operator. So one of the things to be important here is that is everything relevant required for the C max value over here on the right. Depends on which that value is depending on all the other values of how you install the operator. Most of the time, you actually play in the moment and decide. So how to put the operator, the height, for example, how far it's going to be. But you can use this as a guidance. This is the parts that comes from the operator. So obviously it has the gate bracket, the door to access the unlock the to unlock the operator. Uh, So mostly it shows a few holes in the post bracket. So so you can adjust, fine tune the position of the gate of the operator in the gate. This is how you unlock it. This is how you cover. You put this and you turn on the key and you can unlock it. This is the two models, and this is what I was talking about. The C value is the how important is that the limit of the weight depends on how long is the door. There's two models over here. This is the 3 meters motor, and this is for 5 meter motor. So obviously a 3 meter motor can handle 3 meters, but it can be maximum 400 kilograms. And in the specs, it says they can handle 800 kilograms maximum. But that would be only if the leaf is 2 meters. So that's why it's very important to know exactly that relation of limits. Same for the 5 meter motor model. It can handle 1,000 kilograms, but the leaf itself is a single leaf. It can be maximum 2 meters in that weight, and it can handle 5 meters, but that leaf it has to be less than 400 kilograms. So remember that relation. That is very important. Sometimes people will say, "Oh, it was 5 meters, and it can handle 1,000 kilogram leaf," but actually no. There's a relation between those two. So you have to keep that in mind. And this in the manual, you can check it out. So you do the comparison, see if it's out. This is the technical data for maybe the power is relevant. Sometimes for people that use a generator or a solar panel. Uh, uh, so another one, maybe, yeah, you can check it out. It continue operation. So it continues, get open and close continuously without overheating. So you can later check it out. So first things to installation is to put the brackets in the wall or column or pillar or whatever it is it's going to be, and also in the gate. Like I say, it has holes, so you can fine tune the exact position. But obviously, the height has to be horizontal and take all the measurements I mentioned before. As a suggestion, obviously, you can change everything depending on the site. It's important to put some grease or oil in the hinges, and also it's important not to tight the bolts too tight, because it can basically obstruct the, the turning of the hinge on each side. So that's another thing to keep in mind. After that, you have to adjust the limit switches. Like I said, one for opening and one for closing. This says the A is for opening and C for closing. And so you adjust that with a little flat screwdriver, and you turn it to the right side. So you unlock the gate, open everything to wherever you want to stop. And using a multimeter, sometimes people use just a little sound that does the switch. It's a click sound, and you can adjust with the screw going clockwise, so it clicks or the connection is closed. And you will do the same for the close position. You will close the gate manually, and then adjust the little with a flat screwdriver. Adjust the C screw, this is C, so until it clicks or the the contact is closed. So once we do that, this is an opening outwards. This is another option. Then not only can open to the inside, that's more common, but also it can be installed in a way that it can open outwards to the outside. But to do that, you will have to cut the bracket and add a piece of metal so you can sew a weld, and that way we'll have space for the operator to open the gate without colliding to itself. And once we do everything, so the next thing will be to consider which control board you want to use. There's two versions, at least from the new boards. There's two versions, the medium version and the special version. Obviously, the medium has less options and is smaller, has less features, but is still capable of managing the operator. And this S version, more complete. And I'm going to do the overview to configure that. Actually, we've done already trainings about this, so you can check it out if you want more depth information about those two. This is the differences. One is for graphic display, one is 7 segments. Like I said, if you want more details about the control boards, you can check it out in other training we've done. But the connection is basically the same. It's 3 cables for each motor. So if you use only one motor, you will have to connect in M2. So it will be M2, N2, and ENC2 if it's one operator. If it's two, just connect the two. So M and N is something I want to point out is M and N is exactly the motor itself, the DC motor. So sometimes we do a test where you apply a voltage and a battery to test the motor. That's one of the tests we've done. We can recommend when troubleshooting and stuff. So so always keep in mind M and N is just the motor, and E and C is just the cable where basically an encoder, and it gives the signal that it reached the limits. So there you go. So if you use two motors, sometimes the gates overlap each other, and in that case, by default, they have a delay for opening the M1, and it has a delay for closing M2. So if the gates are actually not overlapping each other and there's no obstruction between them, you can remove that delay. There's an option in the menu, so you can remove that delay. That's a very common question we have. So this is the connections for giving a command. All these connections are in the control board. Remember, we're talking about right now the CLX24S. Although the connection itself, this one in particular, is the same as the M version. And actually, most of our control boards have this basically the same layout with the pins. In this case, so remember one thing is that the pin 2 is the common, and we use the common for everything basically, for giving commands, for photo cells. And so that's why in the diagram it shows exactly the pin 2 used in conjunction with another pin. For the first one, it would be a total stop. That's a safety features to disable the operator. That's the only one that is normally closed contact. That's why it shows in red and in C. That if you enable that feature, you need to have that contact between 1 and 2. We have to be close. If you open that contact, the operator is going to be disabled until you close that contact. The other 4 pins are basically for giving a command for opening, closing, and both. The 2 and 3 is just for opening. So 2 obviously the command, and 3 for opening. That's a normally closed contact. I remember that part. Sometimes people have problems with putting a normally closed contact, and no, it's actually a normal open. So you give a pulse, a short pulse, and it's going to open between 2 and 3. Between 2 and 3P is a partial open. If it has 2 gates, it's going to open only 1 gate, or you can set it up also to open partially. Maybe it's just to pass a person, and some people like that feature. And there's for closing command is between pins 2 and 4. So between 2 and 4, if you have a small short pulse, it's going to close the gate. And finally, there has a 2 and 7. 2 and 7 is it's interesting because you can handle open and close. You give a pulse and it opens, give another pulse and close. And you can set it up also to stop in the middle, or whatever place you click and it's open, stop, close, stop. So it's very interesting pin that is very popular. This is the connections for the lights and indicators. Sometimes you use relays to manage and other operators, and sometimes in conjunction with barriers, for example, sometimes disable the barrier or give a pulse. So it's a very interesting connector. Like I said, I'm trying to go fast between this. If you want more details, you can watch the the video about this control board. This is a way to to connect the photo cells, safety photo cells, or sometimes ground loops. Obviously, you have to give powers, but that will be between 10 and 2. 10 and 2 here, the power. And there's a normally close contact. In this case, since it's a safety feature, is normally close contact. It will be between the common, that is 2, and another pin that it will be either, in this case, it has 4 inputs for safety devices. You can program each one in different ways. Usually we use 2 and CX, so it's a normally close contact. So between 2 and CX, it has to be always a contact. And when there's a obstruction in the photo cell, it opens that contact. So the control board knows that has to, depends on however you configure. Usually it's C1, that is while it's closing, if it's an obstruction, then it stops and opens again. Or you can program in different ways. And this is the way you can configure the control board. It has 4 buttons and a display. It has to escape, obviously goes to go back, basically, the menu. The left arrow and right arrow, you can move them through the menu, and enter to enter the menu and confirm operations. And actually, I can show you, let me give me a second. I can show you how it's configured. There's a video I did about another operator, but it can be useful so you can see how we configure all this control board. So obviously you press enter to get inside the menu and use the arrow to maneuver the menu. First option is configuration, and so you can set to enter, and we recommend to go to from settings. There's a wire safety devices. It's a bunch of options. Although I recommend you use the wizard that is going to guide you through all the basic options. So that's what I'm going to do right now in the video. So get to configurations and wizard. That's a very important, very useful feature. So the wizard is going to go through that, just the steps of how to configure. So basically, the first step will be number of motors. You can set only M2, it will be only 1 motor, or you can set it for M1 and M2, that if you have 2 motors. Basically, that's the only 2 options in this step. In my case, in here in this video, I had only 1 motor, so I choose 1. And also, you have to put the motor type. In this case, if you have the ATS, you will put ATS or whatever motor you have. In the video, when I did the presentation, I had a Fernie, so I put Fernie. This is a motor check for, so if you hold the left arrow, it's going to open motor number 1. And if you hold the right arrow, it's going to open motor number 2. If I only have 1 motor, that is in M2, so that will open that motor, it's the only motor that I have. It's important that you notice that it's opening and not closing. If it's closing, then it's inverted, so you have to invert M and N, the motor, DC motor. It's asking if the input CX is in use. Like I said, you put a photo cell over there. And usually the most common option is C1. Like I said, C1 reopen while closing. That's a very common option. And if you're not going to use any photo cell, so you disable it. In this case, in this video, I have a photo cell, so I put C1. And CY, there's another input, but I'm not going to use, so I leave it off. Same for CZ, I leave it off. So, and there's a CK input, also off, because I'm not going to use. As users, just remember to the remote control, you need a AF card to be installed in the board. And then you can confirm if you want to add it. A user basically is a remote control, and you can set what's the mode that you want to do, what you want to do the button to do. Step by step is open and close. See, question is open, stop, close, stop. There's also for opening only, but depending on what a client wants, so you can choose which option they want. Opening, if you want me to, so sequential, that's the most common, so I will choose that. And waiting for code, you have to press the button for the remote control. Store and user number 1, and you can add more remote controls in a moment, but in this case, I only have 1, so that's it. And the last step is trouble calibration, and you will have to confirm yes. And that will do is close and open the gate, and you have two gates and two operators that will do that for both. And that way it's going to remember the travel and basically learn the entire travel of the gate. One of the things you can do without the menu is that you can control the gate with the left and right arrow. Remember not to be in the menu itself. So if you press the left arrow, it will open the gate, and right arrow for closing. And also I'm going to do another review about the common options. So you press enter to go to the menu, and then you press enter again for the go configurations, and you can run settings, and there's an opening speed because by default it's in 70% for opening speed. Maybe you would like to have put in 100%, so I recommend you can play with that option. And also for closing, it has a speed for closing, so you also can set it for 100% to open and close at the least amount of time. You would choose whatever speed you want. There's another option for the very common that is in times. You can set, for example, automatic closing. And then if you press enter, then you can set the amount of seconds you want the gate to remain open before closing automatically. That's a very common option that we have in these operators. And for the moment, I think, yes, that's it for the basic configuration. You had everything done. Obviously, there are many other features, and you can check out the video we done about this board because there are many features, but those features are mainly the control board, not the operator. And we wanted today to focus mostly on the operator and the basic configuration. So if you have any questions and you have problems, you can also always reach out to us by email, telephone. We're always here for helping for your technical problems. So here, thank you for your attention and see you next time. Bye.